a little unsure how much to say this morning, or whether to split it in two, because now we have two branches, two parallel streams to our practice, with the metta and what Catherine was talking about last night. So let's see how it goes. Just really instructions this morning, quite simple. So with the metta, yesterday Catherine introduced the category of the difficult person, and as we've said quite a few times, we're basically moving towards this fullness of what the metta is. The ideal aspiration of the metta is all beings without exception. Completely limitless and boundless, the extent and the radius of the metta, so that the loving kindness embraces all beings without any exclusion. So that's what we're going to be introducing this morning. In a way, we could have gone much slower with the whole thing, and sort of spaced the categories more even. This will be obviously the last category. But what we'll have from now on is we'll have 6 categories of metta that you can choose from. So you'll have the self, the easiest person, the friend, the neutral, the difficult, and all beings. There's sort of 6 gears that the metta practice can be in. And from now on, this point in the retreat, with the metta practice, having that sense of the availability of all 6 categories, and just like what works right now, what's helpful in the metta right now, and am I trying to get the fire going, or am I trying to stretch the heart a little bit where it perhaps doesn't want to go? To be flexible with that sense of choosing from these categories in any sitting or in any period, sub-period of a sitting, to mix them up and just choose in that way. I'll get to this. Sometimes actually all beings is easier than any single person. There's a way that is very simple. I'll talk about that in a sec. It's very simple. Sometimes it feels like too much to do all beings, and you need to be more with oneself or one specific friend or whatever it is. And just to touch on something I've mentioned before, it can be, and we said this, it can be really, really healing over a period of time to really emphasize the metta to oneself and really give oneself that tenderness and that care and that holding and receiving that oftentimes we haven't so much, or we may be in need of. And so weighting the metta practice towards oneself can be hugely skillful and can sometimes be unskillful. This goes with everything in practice. If I am giving metta to another person, I'm meditating and the metta is going to another person or to all beings, there's a very real way that I am getting healed in that process. It's almost like this energy has to move through me on its way out to other beings. It cannot reach other beings without saturating my body and touching me. And sometimes the sense I told you whenever it was the other night, I just want to hunker down in my little cocoon of metta to myself. And actually, it cannot not pervade me on its way out. Do you see that? And I wonder sometimes, the inclination is very understandable, and I've done it in the past as well, and it's been very fruitful, but sometimes when I just want to give the metta to myself, I wonder sometimes if that can partly be connected with this fear, really, that a person can have, is a sense of there not being enough love to go around. There's not enough, and I better keep it here. There's only so much, and I've only got so much, and there's only so much in the universe, and I better make sure that I get my share and not squander it to all these other people. So, like so many things, there's not a right and a wrong answer. What's right is to have the openness of questioning. That's what's right, rather than there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And is that questioning alive, and am I open to considering how I'm doing things? And it might be that one really wants to emphasize the metta towards the self. But to keep that openness and that questioning alive. So when we get to the loving kindness to all beings, there's different kind of techniques that you can use. I actually don't mind which techniques. So one way is that's quite popular for people to use is by direction. So it's, so to speak, all beings to the north. Actually, that's east, but never mind. All beings. All beings in front. You could say all beings to the north, all beings to the south, all beings to the west, and all beings to the east, all beings to the up, and all beings to the down. That's 6. All beings to the north east, all beings to the northwest, all beings to the north southeast, and all beings to the southwest. Some people even go all beings to the northwest. So if that's your cup of tea, go for it. Honestly, that's really, really fine. It can help. They're all beautiful ways of practicing. That's not my particular favourite, but it's actually very nice. Another possibility is categories of being. Okay, so you do something like all insects, all humans, all mammals, all small furry mammals, all all slithering things, etc., all angelic beings, whatever. And being all men or women or children, you can split it up in lots of different ways. You can be quite creative there. So that could be very interesting, if you want to explore that. You can also combine these two methods. So, all small furry animals to the northwest. If you want. Have fun with it. So that all that's possible. What I would, my preference, and I'll give you a reason for this. My preference is actually to be much simpler, and kind of just going from this body sense that we've been developing, this openness to the body and the sense of the energy of the body and the space of the body. It's actually just that begins radiating out. And this kind of sphere of light, of metta, of energy, whatever it is, begins just radiating like a ball. It's just a ball, and it just goes 360 degrees and in all directions. And so it has to touch everything that it encompasses, and eventually it gets infinite. You're just opening that out. And what you're really doing then is you're starting with this body sense that we've already been emphasizing, and that openness of the body, and then just allowing that to expand, and allowing the metta to expand with the sense of the metta, the imagination of the metta even to expand with that. Do you understand? So in a way, just spatially, it will then encompass all beings very naturally.
So without saying anything?
You can still use the phrases, absolutely, but you could say, may all beings be da-da-da, or may we. And thank you, Jane, that's important, because sometimes persons say, may all beings, and just what's crept in is all beings except me, without even realizing it. So may we might be interesting as well. But you could use the phrases if they're helpful. If they're feeling like at times the phrases are not so important or helpful, you just let them go. Same as before. So, like everything, there's many ways to do it, and even with this sense of spaciousness that can extend, for some people, just like, remember when we said with the body sense, and you can just feel into the body sense and then kind of interpret that as metta. Do you remember we talked about it? Yeah? Same with the space, actually. For some people, it's actually allowing themselves to get a sense of really big space, and then just hanging out there, and then realizing that there's metta naturally begins to fill that space, just by virtue of the spaciousness of consciousness opening up. Does that make sense? So one obvious way is how we've been doing it is you do the metta, you just open it up and extend the metta. The other way is just actually letting things become spacious and just paying attention, very light, very delicate, to the quality of that space. And some people, that works better actually. Spaciousness first, and then noticing, oh look, in that space, it has the quality of metta in it. It might be quite subtle. Might be. And with that, or with all this opening to this spaciousness, it can be, it's possible, I'm not saying it will happen, it's possible, that a perception is allowed, let's say. A perception is allowed that, as we were saying just now, it's like the love imbues the space. There is this space, the universe is obviously full of space at one level, and there's a kind of, it's filled with love, it's filled with metta, and it's a sense of one noticing that or perceiving that. It's shot through with love. It's love or metta is, you could say, woven into the fabric of the universe. So it's possible that at times for some people in metta practice that kind of perception begins to open up. We've actually touched on it in here before, I think in a Q&A. And the person begins to wonder, well, what is love then? What is love, this word, love? And it's this, it's that, define it this way, define it that way. Actually, the deeper one goes into practice, the more one sees, it's going to always be beyond my concept of it. Always going to, you can't put it in a box like that, this word love. Say it's this, it's that. Do you remember those little cartoons, Love Is, with the two naked little children? It's this, it's that. It's all of that, maybe. So all that's good. Maybe something like that opens up, and if it does, wonderful, beautiful. And fine if it doesn't. It's all good. All these senses of love that we have, all these perceptions, really, is what they are. Perceptions of love. They're all important and they're all good. So sometimes, I think Julia asked a question one time. Sometimes the sense of love is very personal. It's this self to that self, and wishing you well. Really, really important, really beautiful. And sometimes, for some people in the practice, deepens and opens in this way. There's a sense of love being almost something impersonal. So say it's just in the universe, a kind of mystical perception. So the human and the mystical, the personal and the impersonal, all of it's there for us, and all of it's important. Not to kind of, close the door on one or the other, or prioritize one or the other even. What's actually really ends up being more significant here is the change in perception. Again, we've touched on this, I think in Q&As and things. Change in perception. So it's like things open up, practice goes deeper, if we use that word, and there are changes in perception. It's the fact that perception changes that's really significant, and how it changes. And this has everything to do with emptiness. If we see, and I think, I can't remember if I said this at one point, I have this sense of a problem. I have this sense of a problem, a difficulty. I'm having a difficulty with a person, or with something in myself, or with a situation. Could be here, could be elsewhere. And it really seems like it's a problem. And then, because I'm doing the metta practice, and I just see, I go in and out. If I'm really dedicated to the metta practice, putting the time in, it goes in and out of different mind states. Sometimes it's soft and open and relaxed, and there's that warmth there. Sometimes I'm tight and contracted and reactive, and everything in between. And I just see the mind state swings back and forth, it swings. And with that, the perception changes. And when I feel contracted and reactive, what's my perception of this problem? It's problematic, right? The problem is definitely a problem. It looks like a problem. It's obvious that it's a problem. It's quite clear. I feel it as a problem. It seems like the problem is in the problem. And as I swing the other way, at times the metta practice begins to open out and warm up a little bit, etc. There's this opening of the body, of the texture of things. And what happens, I can actually sometimes it swings enough that I look at that same problem, and where's the problem gone? Have you ever experienced this? It's dissolved. We say, in technical Dharma language, we say, the problem is empty of inherent problemness. It's empty of inherent problemness. It's not really a problem without me making it a problem. I have to make a problem. Nothing in itself is a problem. By itself, independent of me. We say it's empty. It's empty of inherent problemness. Problemitude, or whatever the word. You understand? But we can see this. It's like, how many times do I need to see that till I get it, till the coin really, really drops, and I cannot anymore believe in the inherent problemness of things. And then what is it to move through life knowing that in the heart?
Answer yes.
What's that?
On how many times?
Where's the answer?
I don't know. Millions?
Well, I've heard that it takes 10,000, something to do with brain neurochemistry or something. A lot, I think, is the answer. Or, I don't think it's so linear, actually. And that's partly, if we go back to me harping on about this body sense and the samadhi, etc. The deeper the samadhi, in other words, the deeper the sense of quietness and openness and harmonization of the being, much greater the chance of an insight that you have really taking deep root in the soil of the being. So I can throw out a thing like that, and if you're agitated, and even in the middle of agitation, say, yes, I know, that makes sense, of course, that's right, it doesn't make any difference at all. And being gets really quite slight. That's why we keep saying, go where it's easy, really develop that, let it get quiet, when it can. It's not always going to be like that. But something happens to the soil of the consciousness at those quiet times. The same insight, and that insight in that moment might not even look very remarkable or feel very remarkable. In other words, intensity is not a marker of how deep an insight goes. This was a fantastic experience, or this awful thing that I just went through, and then I saw, and it was like an explosion, and the lightning came, and the heaven, and it's like, great. And then half an hour later, So sometimes intensity goes with lasting insight, and sometimes it really doesn't. I might just see, I'm just sitting, and the samadhi has gone deep, and things are opening up, and I'm just looking at a little niggle in my back. It's really not even that painful. And I'm just seeing that it takes me to make a problem out of it, and that by itself it's not a problem. And the shift, even from the amount of suffering to the release of that suffering, is not even that dramatic. But it could be that one's seen it really, really deeply, and that stays in the heart as something very powerful, because one's unpacking, unbinding this sense of what reality is. We're beginning to do that. So it may be intense, it may be not intense, etc. But a problem is dependent on the mind state. So, actually related to that, today is an absolutely beautiful day so far. Beautiful light and stillness. And the last few days have not been that. They've been cold and rainy and windy and all that. One teacher I had who's very influential for me, he said sometimes, if it's cold and raining and you don't feel like going for a walk, go for a walk. If you're hungry, don't eat. And if you're tired late at night, don't go to bed. yet. And a person can hear that and say, that's not kindness. That's not kindness. I want to be cozy. I want to wrap myself in the cozy, take care of myself. So we're missing something there. We're missing something. Let's see where this lands. Oftentimes we don't see that there's aversion around. You look outside on a day not like today, and it looks cold and rainy and just the air's wet and everything, and there's aversion to that. And I think if I go out I'll get soggy and it'll be damp and cold and unpleasant, and there's aversion to that. Or sometimes even with tiredness, there's a sense of, I don't like this feeling of tiredness. There's aversion to the tiredness. That aversion is a non-openness of heart. Do you see that has everything to do with love? I'm not sure if it's obvious. It has everything to do with love. When the heart is open, first of all, energy comes in terms of tiredness, but also the heart being open is the same as aversion getting less. It's maybe not obvious. I'm seeing some people look puzzled there. So we tend to think of the heart being open having to do with this sense of kindness towards beings and softness, etc. But actually, when there's aversion to something like cold, windy rain, there's a closing of the heart. Check it out. Maybe don't just believe me. Check it out. Explore. When you feel like you don't want to go outside, what state is the heart in? Actually check with your heart center, right in the center of the chest. Is it open or closed? Just check it out. So again, love is bigger than we think it is. It doesn't fit into this little image that I might have.
Would you see the same for clinging and attachment?
Yes. Yeah, generally, yeah. It's maybe a little more complicated, but yeah.
It's kind of pretty cool going to sleep sometimes as well.
Going to sleep is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, we need to sleep.
When you get into bed and you're like, this is so cool. You know what I mean? It's like, I really like it.
Yeah, all of it.
And I'm gone.
Of course. And then eating when we're hungry, of course. And staying in with a cosy cup of tea when it's cold. All of that. So, again, if I go back to what I said at the beginning, it's like, there's not a right and a wrong here. What I'm interested in is, am I questioning the habitual ways I relate to things and the habitual ways I assume around things? Do you understand? So, of course we need to sleep, of course we need to, and it's lovely to enjoy that at the end of the day, just lying there, etc. And we like warmth, and that's why we build houses and buildings, obviously. But something in here can get contracted in a way that we wouldn't even make the connection with love. Do you understand? We just don't even think of the two together. I don't even think of that having anything to do with this. And it does. It absolutely does. And all I need is an honesty and an openness and a sensitivity to how this is all feeling, and I'll start to notice that.
So is it kind of a container again, containing the experience?
Which is
to stay up when you're tired, to contain.
Maybe put it this way. When there's aversion, let's say, around, we either get dragged along by that aversion. It tells us what to do. And in telling us what to do, aversion is a movement of closing. We're closing the heart, we're closing the consciousness, we're closing. Yeah? Do you see that? Do you see that aversion is closing? When we go along with what aversion says don't go out there, you might get wet. Aversion, there's a closing. We go along with that closing of what it says to do, and how do we end up feeling? We end up feeling more closed. And I say, well, I want to have the love, but I don't want to. It's like, maybe I can't have one without the other. So, and so it's tired at night. And of course, I'm just trying to open things up a little bit here, and the questioning. And it's a similar thing. Tiredness comes, and there's a sense of wanting to close down. When we go to sleep, we're actually closing down. We're closing out the world, hunkering down, curling up and closing everything, which of course can be a movement of kindness, and is. And yet that closing down, it's like, well, what am I, if I'm going along with it, I'm just closing, and I close the whole system down. And right here in the heart as well. If I don't, then actually it's possible. You're free to play with all of this as you wish or not. And there may be some discoveries here that may be late and I stay up. And actually, if the heart opens more, maybe everyone else has gone to bed, and I'm just working and the heart starts to open, suddenly I have more energy. Now where did that come from? It's just to do with the aversion opening or closing. When the aversion is there, closes the being, closes the energy system, we feel tired. Now, not to make too big of a deal of this, because like I said, the heart opens and closes all day long, and the energy system opens and closes all day long. That's normal. That's completely normal.
So you think, sorry to bump in, you think that's a key area where aversion arises in the heart centre?
Every time there's aversion, it will affect the heart centre, no question. And every time the heart centre is closed, there's likely to be some aversion causing that and resulting from that. Yeah, definitely. And so the heart, but not to make too big a deal, heart opens and closes all day long, many times, most of the night as well. And we want to understand the influence that has. When the heart is closed, things look, I feel a certain way, etc. When that opens, that changes. And also we can support some of the conditions here. Like I said, we can actually start questioning things and playing with things somewhat differently.
So you're saying if you notice that you're feeling a bit contracted and painful, one response might be, right, I'm going to open my heart, out I go, and you could end up with a feeling trying to force something open. Yeah. So you're saying not obviously that wouldn't be a wise thing to do. But you might want to play. Yeah.
You might want to play. Forcing rarely works. Sometimes forcing works, but it's like, it just. So many examples I've had, I'm in an interview with someone and they're quite upset about something, and they're working with it, and then they say, I think I'm going to just, this is quite relatively common, they say, I think I'll just go and get under the covers now, they say, and I understand, it feels vulnerable, etc. And sometimes my sense that's completely the wrong thing. It's completely the wrong thing. Actually what they're doing is shutting something down there. And what might be actually as good is to go for a walk and open something up. Or just the fact that I don't feel like it, and then I do it, it can reverse that movement of the contraction. It's not a forcing, it's more like opening things out and experimenting. I have this view, and it just seems so obvious that what I need to do is hunker down with a cup of tea and be all, come do this, and that looks like kindness. And maybe there's something about opening up the whole thing. So if I never intended to talk more than about 2 minutes. It's like, here we are. It's obviously hitting a nerve here. There's not a right way and a wrong way. It's the third time I'm saying this. What I'm more interested in is how open are you to questioning. That's what matters. That's what matters to me. Someone could always be, they're from the SAS or whatever, and they always go out in the rain, and they always push themselves, and they always force. Great, they might need to work a little bit on the coziness factor. And it's like, I need to look at myself, and what's my pattern? I always go for the cozy cup of tea and the early night and the da-da-da and the, whatever. And it's like, if that's the pattern, am I closing myself without even realizing it, and I've just gotten used to it? So for me, always what's more important is how open and alive is your questioning. That's it. Where you end up in terms of result, I don't care at all. I really don't care. What I care about is the aliveness of the questioning. That makes all the difference. All the difference. It's so easy to go through life driven by certain movements inside ourselves without even being conscious of what they are and how much they constrict us. So easy. And until I start opening to that and questioning and trying different things, it's like, there it goes, And the days go by, and the years go by, and the decades go by. So, it was interesting that lasted longer, but just I really wanted to point out is this question of heart openness is maybe touches on more than we think it does, in terms of what love is and what kindness is and how the heart opens. Yeah.
Just what Catherine was saying last night, that follows on from that, but she also talked about we were going to be doing the two practices kind of alongside of each other. I thought you might have said something about you saying in a sitting we do metta and then we use also what Catherine was talking about as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. So here's the deal. That's why I said at the beginning I'm not sure whether to split this into two today. So it's now 11:30. I can talk a little bit about that other practice. I could do that now, or later, but the day's a little tight for just in terms of my scheduling today. But what's your preference? I'm happy either way. I'm certainly happy to talk a bit more now, or have you kind of had enough? What's that?
Later would be my preference. I don't know.
I mean, I kind of was quite eager to know
how to do it.
But also, if there is a possibility for later, that's fine.
Why don't I come back at 4:00 and really speak briefly then, and then I probably need to be elsewhere, but I'll just try and keep it brief at 4. Does that sound okay? And just be quite specific about how to work with that other practice for now. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So why don't we sit now together? Just finding your way into your posture and filling out the posture with sensitivity, with awareness. Beginning the metta practice when you feel ready, just wherever it feels easiest. And in the course of the day today, taking some time to really explore, allowing the metta to open and to be unbounded, to touch all beings. As always, allowing the playfulness, the creativity, the responsiveness to come into the practice. And finding what works for you.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teacher